Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've been involved in 17 startups and two unicorns. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for 1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI etcher tech company that I formed with Dr. David Yang. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, and opportunities are not. I'm the CEO, president, and co founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. And with that, I have an incredible guest today, James Mister, who's going to be talking about Bavaria and some of the things that he's doing from the Economic Council, also the journey that he's taken as an entrepreneur, as an investor, and what the importance of technology ecosystems are in the US, Germany, the digital transformation, and the EU. So with that, I'd like to bring James on board. James, how you doing today?
Hi, Gary. Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Hey, so I
Can
have a
everyone hear
question
me all
for
right?
you. I
Yeah.
hear you perfectly. How in the world did you go to Princeton University? What did you do?
Oh,
How did you decide on Princeton?
well, I think it's a combination of things, but the two most important things is to go to a feeder school. So I went to a college prep program that, of course, had kids that got into Princeton every year. So it was a known entity. And the second thing is to apply early, I think, and show a clear interest that it's the only school. I think in most things, whether it's university or a job, you always tailor your offer, your resume to make it seem like they're the only and best suited institution for you.
Oh, that's great. And where are you originally from? Are you from Germany originally? Where are you from?
No, I'm originally from Chicago. Actually, I'm from the Midwest, and I studied on the East Coast. I lived in Germany for nearly 7 years, and in Switzerland, and then I moved to the U.S. 5.5 years ago. So I've come around quite a lot. 5 countries in which I've lived, 3 in which I've studied, and that's how I came to work now for the Bavarian government here in
Oh
Silicon
my God,
Valley.
that's amazing. That's a
Yeah,
great journey.
yeah.
Wow. And I heard you speak in German. So you sounded, I don't know German. I know Russian.
Yeah.
Pretty
When we first met, actually, yeah, we were actually greeting each other in Russian because I also speak a little Russian as well. I might take up Ukrainian at the moment, given the global state of
probably
affairs.
not a
But I
bad.
want to touch on geopolitics.
Yeah, no, I don't
um,
think. Yeah, a lot of changes taking place in the world, James. I mean, that's got to have a
for
direct
sure.
influence on the ecosystem in Germany and the ecosystem around the world. It's like the
More, more,
reverberation.
more and more and more, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, and we kind of, yeah, I my family is half Ukrainian, so my wife's
Oh,
family is in Ukraine right now, in Kiev and Slavyansk and
wow,
Irpin and places like that. So the stuff that I hear when I call them is just off the top. I mean, I've never bombs going off and those kind of things. It's just you never would in a normal world. You would never think that those kind of things could take place. It's
for
amazing
sure,
how
for
quickly
sure.
it changes, huh?
For sure. I mean, I have friends in all of those countries, even though some of the countries where people are fleeing, also Belarusian friends, also those who are from Moldova. And everyone is really just shocked at the huge humanitarian crisis, but more importantly, how Europe will respond on both sides and how people are suffering on both sides, even in Russia right now. And, people's grandmothers can't get medicine and all sorts of things. So it's just all around a humanitarian crisis. And as long as we keep people in our hearts and minds, I think that we'll all get through this period, this just dark period. What's interesting is that now focusing a little bit on Europe and the energy security issue that it brings up, it actually relates to a lot of the work that I do. So a bit of what I focus on a personal as well as professional level is the green digital transformation. So not just the digital transformation of industry and enterprise, the middle market, as which is helped by startups and scale ups, but I also focus on how things can remain or become more low carbon, decarbonized. Net zero is a term that I use a bit more sparingly because this whole offsetting culture is not something, carbon offsetting is not something that I like to dive too deeply into for ethical reasons. But overall, I think the main goal right now is to help Europe become more secure on an energy level, and then also ensuring that industry and everything else that draws from industry, mobility and transport, and energy in general, that draws from that energy is able to do it sustainably, as clean as possible, and as sustainably in terms of over time as possible, without having to rely on certain countries. I think that that's the most important thing any country can do.
It's kind of interesting that things come up over the last couple of weeks, and you understand how intertwined we are. At the same time, how people don't really care. On one side of it, it's amazing. The other part of it, our average temperatures on the planet Earth, James, could go up 7 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. By 2050,
oh wow, okay.
By 2050, we got to double the food supply, right, in order to feed everybody. And 26% of the pollution is methane gas, which is from livestock. So if you look at it, we've got to make some serious changes in order to be able to survive. Most people don't realize that 80% of the fresh water is up in the Antarctic. And if it melts, it is, nothing good's going to happen when that, trapped methane gas starts to come out.
No. Good. Very good on you for noting that. I think the food agriculture land use bit of and its impacts on climate are underrated. Unfortunately, it's not something that I am too deeply involved in. I mean, I know quite a lot of anecdotes, whether we're talking about people going meat-free, people going dairy-free, switching to milk sources that don't require, or natural milk sources that aren't so water intensive. For instance, we can even get into more granular things like almond milk's sustainability due to the amount of water intensity for the production of it. Eating beef, which in the American economy is a lot more important than for, say, let's say in the Far East, where people eat a bit more pork, or in Europe. The food agriculture and land use bit of it is important for those reasons, and then also for reasons that are related to biomass production, which can be related to the trapping of methane gas, and then perhaps the deployment of that for a green hydrogen source, hydrogen as an electricity source, or as a warming source. So there are so many different directions in which we can go when we talk about food agriculture land use and how we can make it more climate neutral, and definitely something that I wish I was more involved in. My main focuses, I would say, or foci, I never know how to pronounce that. I want to say it in the Italian, foci, are mostly on mobility and transport, energy, and industry. Not only because those are meet with the industry as it exists in Germany's very densely industrial and enterprise focused south. The former American sector of Germany is, of course, Baden-Württemberg and Bavaria, Bavaria being the largest state in Germany. And its connection to America is inextricable, or it's a bond that has been formed for nearly, I would say, 80 years. And the reason that American companies and what's happening here is relevant in terms of digital transformation, in terms of corporate innovation, is ideas that are sort of ideas that scale, are sort of able to transfer over and be applicable in industry, or be deployed into enterprises and help them reach their efficiencies, or become more digitalized, which is the goal at the end of the day: to work faster, to work smarter, to automate as much as possible, and also to prepare the workforce for what work looks like in the future. A lot less manual, a lot more automated, a lot more technical, a lot more skilled. Digital transformation goes across from industrial production. Yeah, but anyway, I can hold off.
I want to focus on that for a second, James, because this is close to my heart. My grandmother immigrated from Africa when she was 13 years old. Right, she came over here with a dream. I work a lot with Black entrepreneurs all over the world. I just last week was a judge at one of the competitions in Washington. Here's the deal. We need to go in. We work in Africa, so my company's in Nigeria, Ghana, Zambia, South Africa, Egypt, as well as another 37 other countries. Here's the deal, though: how do we get down through and make this a better place by opening up the opportunities for everybody? Doesn't matter what race, color, or creed, because in America today, in the world today, we're not using all the resources properly, right? We're not engaging people to come in.
No, no.
Technology, I mean, um, there aren't many entrepreneurs of color, which there should be, right? And I remember my grandmother as a kid spoke Arabic to me as a kid when I was growing up, and I, she kind of hid it a little bit. She didn't like talk, she did
Mhm.
it with my mom and my grandfather, but it was interesting. How do we go down and make this a better world by bringing everybody together so we can have jobs, so people can feed their families, whether they're in Germany, whether Austria, or Switzerland, or the U.S. How do we do that?
I think, well, there has been just a historic, I don't know what to call it, a misalignment or resource distribution that has not been, I would say, equitable. And that's where we start. So with recognition that there isn't an equitable resource distribution, we can see that all over the world. I, for one, have actually invested in a startup actually in Kenya that was founded by, that's in the mobility and logistics space, enterprise mobility and logistics, founded by a friend of mine. And I think the best way that I have approached it is as best you can through the networks in which you're involved. So that happened to be a friend of mine from college who, of course, has already had access to education and studied in North America, worked in Silicon Valley, is originally from Nairobi, or one of the third or fourth largest cities in Kenya, now lives in Nairobi with his family. So that is sort of already connected to someone who has privilege, but at the same time, it's the best that you can do where you are. I mean, doing something is better than standing still and not moving at all. In terms of making things more equitable, I think leveraging technology for good is important. So one of the most active startups in Africa was actually founded by a Princeton alumnus. It's called Andela, co-founded, I should say.
I know.
Andela is it's a very well-known entity, and they are also helping upskill a ton of people, both on the east and western coast of South Africa. To my knowledge, I mean, I don't know whether they're really active in the southern part of Africa, but these are various approaches that I feel are always welcome. And as long as they're done with good intention, there are tons of people who are trying to quote unquote do good or act philanthropically without the wherewithal and without the knowledge about how best to go about it. So if we can enable more people who have the means and the desire to help, that's the most important thing.
Well, I mean,
Leverage technology.
James, it's not about entitlement, right? It's about opportunity. I spoke at the
Yeah.
United Nations about 2.5 months ago as technology is a tool for peace, right? And I
Mm.
mean, it's like, guys, this is like keep it simple. I'm a farm boy. I didn't get a chance to go to Princeton. I wasn't smart enough. Two is we didn't have enough money. So
Yeah.
I
It's
grew
all
up.
about access and not. Yeah, well, a part of it's also who you've been around and what you've had access to. Access meaning what you've seen, right? Like there's so many people who come from a place where they've never seen someone who may look like myself, or someone who grew up who never saw people that look like you, and they don't have a reference point, and so not incapable. They're just unable to sort of grab the bull by the horn and take an opportunity because they don't know that those opportunities exist. I mean, I always think of the world in, I guess, four compartments: known, known unknowns, unknown unknowns, and unknown knowns. And the most dangerous ones are unknown unknowns. What don't you know that you don't know? And
Yeah,
how do you
exactly.
best approach
Well,
things
but
that you don't?
what you don't know that you don't know, but the thing is, do you have the curiosity to figure it out?
Exactly. That's curiosity should always drive you, no matter where one is in the quote unquote totem pole. One should always be driven by curiosity for the world. I actually had a chat with a professor recently who had this very straightforward view of what academia should be, and I disagreed. I said, no, I don't think it should just be the goal to publish in a top journal. The goal should be intellectual curiosity and also trying to cultivate something new and innovative and novel in new and existing fields. If a byproduct of that, which should be the natural byproduct of it, if you are actually worth your salt, is a publication in a top journal
Yeah, yeah,
article.
exactly. Yeah, but
You
the
know,
problem is they're not rewarded like that. And if you don't get the funding because you're not publishing the articles, you may not get the promotion and be tenured, right? So it's a
this is exactly. But my point was, well, this leads to commodification, which I don't think is actually it's not actually true to the nature of what academia, the pursuit of what academia, what the pursuit of academia should be. And that's kind of where I see it as something that's really disheartening, because we should be pursuing, new fields. And we had a whole discussion about that. But yeah, a bit about
Well, I
doing
feel the
focus on
same way,
developing
Greg.
equity.
I feel the same way, right? But we got
Yeah.
to make a difference. We got to. I mean, here's the deal. So look at it this way. I had a. I don't know if you've ever heard of Irving Crick, but Irving Crick had a chance to study under Albert Einstein. When I met him, he was. This was back in the early '90s. Irving Crick um, was developed a long range weather forecasting model that look at
Ah,
weather as non-linear. It occurred over time in patterns. And the reason I'm saying that is because one of the things we talked about then is what was going to happen in 2020 and 2022 based on some of the analysis that he did. One of the things he said is, the Gulf Stream is going to stop, Gary, one day. It's going to stop. I said, well, how do you know it's going to stop, Dr. Crick? And he says, you're going to know it's going to stop because it's going to start to snow in the UK, which it has started, right? So you look
mm,
and see over the last 20 years, there's been more and more snow. But he said, when that stops, the food chain stops. Nothing good happens from then on. You're going to start to see these super hurricanes, 200 miles an hour. By the way, a hurricane at 150, and it's not only 50 miles an hour faster, the level of destruction is exponentially up because
mm,
power the winds. It's not like
yeah.
okay, it's only 50 miles, so a little bit more. No.
No,
So
they're orders of magnitude. It's sort of like the Richter
order of
scale. Yeah.
magnitude. And we got to go down through and change that. And I'm concerned, if we don't do something better, if we don't use the technologies that are out there to make our world a better place in 250 or 300 years, we're not going to rear around. We're going to be extinct. And I'm dealing with an ultra high net worth individuals from around the world that I'm having these direct discussions. And these are people that are worth, 30 billion, 20 billion, 10 billion, et cetera. But they're starting to talk about a lot. The other thing, James, as they're talking about, this is actually a company that's in Austria and Germany, is about compassion and empathy, that we've somehow lost sight of who we are, right? And these new metaverse systems need to come out to really focus on how to be able to build things better in a more compassionate way, because AI is pragmatic, right? And if you don't have compassion built in, I say kind of like your grandmother. Your grandmother, you can do anything. She loves you unconditionally. She hugs you and kisses, for the most part, hugs you and kisses you. But at the same time, we need some of that built into these systems. And we're going to have to see that in order to survive, because of the level of the unsupervised AI tied in with quantum computers, which are 100 million times faster than the fastest supercomputer today. What would take 10,000 years, take 200 seconds on a quantum at Google, right?
Yeah, I have a friend who's also actually starting a fund right now and raising a fund in Silicon Valley focused on these sort of more mindful technologies, sort of the next iteration in enhancing the tech stack to be a little bit less, I would not say rote, but where you allow sort of intelligent systems, and AI to sort of, I don't want to say run amok, but sort of gather as much data and guide users to things that are more like cyclical and addictive, and where it's sort of a spiral, whether it's downward or upward. I can't really determine. I'm just trying to explain schematically that it's really important to think about what the next era of technology will look like, and hopefully it will look a bit more mindful, where you are engaging with technologies that speak to the person, or the person that you want to be, right? A more empathetic, more thoughtful, more compassionate, more globally minded, more humanitarian, more interconnected in a positive way. And as an American, I would even say more democratic, more liberal in terms of freedoms. Although some might say, well, there's perfectly fine for people to advocate for autocratic nations as well. I don't want to touch on that, but yeah, these are definitely things that people are focused on right now in Silicon Valley, because it's necessary. There's a necessary overhaul in how technology is impacting people and how people interact with it, and how we can go to the next level and be a bit more mindful about it. So definitely.
So tell me a little bit about what you're doing with Bavaria. So how can talk to my audience a little bit about that, and what they can do to engage with you? What kind of programs are you working on today?
Yeah. In general, so my work with Bavaria is more an extension of what I've done over the last decade, which is focused on um, energy topics, mobility and transport, and also startups, right, and scale-ups. So my main mandate is to work with growth stage American companies and also established companies, mature companies even, that are mostly in high tech as well as industry, and even in the life sciences. I have a colleague that focuses exclusively on the life sciences like biotechnology, pharma, and medical devices that are looking to expand towards Europe. Germany, as the largest market in Europe, is a very attractive market. Whether companies have an existing entity in the UK or Ireland or not, the European continent itself is a behemoth. And the best way to approach it is likely through a market that is regulated in a way that mirrors what's done in other countries, or based on the EU's top-down policy structure, where the EU will be regulating based on policies in that country. So Germany has the fortune of having sort of policy structure, and that's whether we're talking about AI and ethics, pending legislation, or legislation on sustainable financial disclosure, legislation on like GDPR, which is data privacy regulations. A lot of those have been harmonized towards the standards and regulations in Germany, which is based on, of course, the technology, the history of technological innovation in that country. So having lived there many years and coming to Silicon Valley, linked still with that ecosystem, especially in the South, specifically in Munich, I found this opportunity, and now I lead the office, and my main mandate is to support American companies that are working on novel technologies. There are some that have been in cloud infrastructure, containerization, Kubernetes. We can talk about cybersecurity. We can talk about computer vision for autonomous driving, LiDAR technologies having to do with semiconductor and chip production, large manufacturing oriented companies that are working to digitalize the factory of the future, right? Make it smarter, make it more analytics driven. So working with all sorts of American companies.
Are you trying to help them go to Bavaria? Is it the key to get them to go to Bavaria?
The key is less about just going to Bavaria. I mean, an investment decision entails a lot of things. So as the largest and the wealthiest state in Germany, when people talk about the German market and thereby the European market, you know, they're talking about a country with an economy larger than Switzerland, or just about the size of it, and larger than Norway and Portugal combined, just that state alone. And as one of the major players at the heart of Europe, it's a very desirable location due to its high quality of life, as well as interconnections with many of the top global companies. IBM Watson is headquartered there. Apple's largest engineering office is in Munich, of course, and they just invested earlier this year $1.3 billion in Silicon research and development. I've worked with companies that have raised well over $1 billion that are expanding, focused on prototyping urban air mobility machine vehicles. So we're dealing with companies that have exposure to satellite navigation technology, aerospace and aviation technology. This is the headquarters of Airbus. The headquarters of the MAN Trucks and Bus Group, the headquarters of Audi, the headquarters of BMW, the headquarters of Siemens, the headquarters of Allianz. These are some of the world's largest companies and top listed German companies. So this market is very attractive and speaks for itself. And right next door, you have also a large market, whether you're talking about the home of SAP and the home of Daimler and the home of companies like Bosch. So for those reasons, Southern Germany is very attractive to a lot of American companies when they're expanding, whether they're in the automotive field, cybersecurity field, biotechnology, whether they're in logistics, supply chain, semiconductor, anything to do with heavy moving parts or industry or even energy, which is where we began this conversation. It's really relevant. It's the original Silicon Valley more than that. You look at where new solar voltaic systems were deployed and tested, onshore wind, that all happened in Bavaria. And this is over 30 years ago. So this region is much more than what might think, due to the cultural cliches of pretzels and lederhosen and Oktoberfest. Beer was also invented there. But
I've been to Munich and Paderborn, so I've been down there at the Oktoberfest myself. I've been to Waldorf and Berlin, but Bavaria is a little bit different. It's nice, very nice.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to say was that also, so my second alma mater, the Technical University of Munich, is arguably the strongest tech bench in Europe. Roughly 20% of all German deal flow flows to that university, and some of the world's largest companies, Germany's first decacorn, has come from that ecosystem. Celonis, or we can talk about the company Flixbus that just purchased Greyhound, now owns America's largest interstate bus transport company. It's owned by a Bavarian started entity from the Technical University of Munich, which started as a digital, of course, platform online with the two clients of a mobile phone or a web interface where you could purchase tickets digitally for coach buses between cities, right? That has now scaled globally. And these are just two examples of companies that I've helped or supported here in the US over the last 5 years. So that's also then the remaining part of my remit, to support those growth stage companies from Bavaria specifically that are entering the US market, whether they're in energy or in mobility or transport or platforms for corporate or enterprise productivity. Those are huge tools, of course, whether you're dealing with market research or productivity tools dealing with communication. You know, all sorts of companies are interested in the market because of the large amount of corporates and large opportunity to help digitalize industry, which is also where we started the conversation. So industrial digitalization is what drives a lot of these companies to go there. You know, corporates want to be digitalized and become more let technology bleed through the company to let people feel like they're a part of the future and in some way, shape, or form, but also to lower costs, increase efficiency, and also increase cohesion. All these sorts of reasons come when you leverage technology for good, I think, in large companies, whether it be it a factory or an office.
No, that's great. So we're coming up to the top of the show. I have viewers from all over the world, and a lot of viewers from Germany, a lot of viewers from the US. How do they get a hold of you, James? What's the best way if they want to come to the US or they want to go to Germany? It sounds like you're the person to go to. How do they get a hold of you or your team?
Well, yeah, well, I'm always available for a chat. I love to also put my email out there. So it's jmister@bavaria.org, BAVARIA.org. Hope I've spelled that correctly. And my name is James. So it's the first initial and the last name at Bavaria.org. Just the best way and most direct way to get in touch with me. I'm always willing to chat, whether there are entrepreneurs. We connect a lot with VCs, of course, working with them in their portfolio companies as they roadmap their European market entry. Just really briefly, how I describe my approach is I break it into 3 large columns, just on a very high level. I focus on the product, I focus on operations, and I focus on finance. You need to be able to finance an expansion if that's the goal. And then you need to think of what are the implications for product and also operations, on the ground. What does it look like? What are the nuts and bolts that need to be taken care of from a tax and accounting, legal, regulatory standpoint? And those things also bleed into product, of course, because things might need to be changed or altered or improved. Some companies, I think, if you're launching in Europe, having your AWS onshore is necessary, for instance. All those sort of intricacies need to be thought through, and many companies are dealing in the quadrant of unknown unknowns. And that's kind of why I'm here to help them, right? I'm here to help them master those unknown unknowns. And also, I guess, some of those known unknowns so that they can go on their way and grow successfully and scale also in Europe. So please reach out if that's of interest to you. Gary, I really want to thank you for having me. And for further questions, I'm here for them.
Yeah, no, James, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I really appreciate it. It's very kind of you. To my audience out there, thanks you for joining my show one more time. GSD presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech, and I'm their host, Gary Fowler. Stay tuned for another exciting edition next Tuesday, and have a great weekend. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. I'll see you soon. Take care. Thanks, James. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. Nice to see you. Bye-bye. We'll chat soon. Bye-bye.